This video is a replay of a trade I took today. Now, it probably goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. I am not a financial advisor, and trading entails risk. Just because I got these results today doesn't mean that I can get these every day, nor that you can. Remember, the entire premise of the investing project and the $1 million experiment is that I am not an expert, and yet I am learning how to do this. So for heaven's sake, don't just blindly copy me. Instead, find a mentor, someone who is an expert, and join their community. Pay for their mentorship. This approach has worked very well for me, and it likely will for you too. So use this video partly as education and partly as inspiration. After all, if I can learn this, you can too.
Okay, so today I am going to do something a little bit different. Instead of recording a trade video, I am instead going to record a bit of a retrospective view of the last couple of days. Because I've done some stupid things, and I want to I want to bring that to everybody's attention, most particularly mine, so that I can learn from this and not repeat it. Now, the first thing is that on Monday, now, just as context, I set up my months in the $1 million experiment to coincide with the time period where the monthly options contracts expire. So any options that are traded monthly, they have a certain expiration, usually the third Friday of the month. And so my officially my month begins the next Monday. So on July the 20th, we began month number 5 in the $1 million experiment. And the very first thing I did, of course, every month for the first 12 months, I'm adding a certain amount of money to the trading account. So I added $3,000, as I've done every month up until now. So I added $3,000. So I end up with I can't remember the exact amount, 17 grand or something like that in the account for trading. 17 or 14, I can't remember. In any event, and I'm willing to risk on a trade up to 2.5% of that amount. Now, at some point, I'm going to lower that percentage, but those are the numbers for the $1 million experiment. What that means is right now, I can afford to risk $450 on any given trade. And that's by design. It's not an accident. And so I size accordingly. Each month I've been sizing up to reflect the size of the account that I'm now trading. So full size on the MYM would have been 8 contracts risking 100 points for $400 or so. That would have been full size. And indeed, that was on my very first trade of the month on Monday. I placed this trade on the MYM. And it ended up being too early. The bounce failed, and I got hit for the full stop, so $400. And I allowed that to color my judgment yesterday and today. And because of that, I've said, I'm going to go smaller. Well, that's actually, I think, a wrong-headed way to look at this. What I need to be doing is I need to be staying at the same risk-adjusted size. Now, the size may vary depending on the quality of the setup. So if I were to say only A-plus setups, ones that are in exactly the right location with a really great setup and a super risk to reward, those might be 8 contracts risking $400 or up to $450. Those ones would be full, but lesser quality ones like a B setup, where the location's not the greatest, the setup's okay, maybe those ones would be smaller size. That's fair enough. But the problem here is this original setup wasn't particularly spectacular. Certainly wasn't A+. It may have been a B+ setup. But you know what? So were all of these. None of them were great. They were okay. And if I'm going to go in and risk $400 of risk on an okay setup, well, that has to be the way I trade all of the setups. And why? Because if I do that, then it allows the wins to pull me out of the hole I dug with my losses, right? I mean, that makes sense. Now, if I'm, as I said earlier, if I'm shifting between super good setups and mediocre setups, well, so be it. But that's not what I was doing. So either I needed to say, no, this was an okay setup. It wasn't worth $400 of risk. It was only worth $200. Well, then fine. I could have made that 4 contracts instead of 8, and I would have lost $200. And then I would have been justified in, for the rest of them, also saying, no, it was really only worth $200 of risk, not 400. And size consistently based on the risk-adjusted nature of what I was doing. Anyway, my main takeaway point here is that I didn't. I used one set of standards for the very first trade, and I used a different set of standards for the rest, and that's a mistake. I need to be consistent with how I view consistent quality setups. So I included this little column here called full risk-adjusted size return, just to illustrate to me what the return would have been yesterday and today if I'd size using the same methodology by which I sized the trade on Monday. So Monday, I went for the full $400 risk, let's say. On Tuesday, I cut it in half. And thereafter, I was half to a quarter of size, depending on throughout the rest of the yesterday and today. And so if I had actually sized appropriately, my $114 loss would have been double the size. I would have had a $228 loss. But when we jump forward here and we look at, trying to get to a point where we risk adjusted and using round numbers of contracts, I would have made, well, let's look at the grand total here. I would have made $1,060 yesterday and today, okay, including the loss, but the rest of them were wins, okay? And that $1,060 would have would have more than offset the $400 loss. In fact, I would be sitting at a profit position of $660 if I had done that. But instead, what I did is I took the full risk on this first setup and then went way smaller for the rest of them. And instead of $1,060, I said, I made a grand total of $315. So 1/3 roughly of the amount that I would have made if I'd sized consistently. And so that 1/3, that 315, it doesn't even cover the hole that I dug. I'm still, even after all of that, I'm still $85 in the hole. All because I decided to size incorrectly. If I'd sized consistently from the beginning, I would be out of this hole already. Now, it might mean that I was in a smaller hole to begin with, and I sized the rest appropriately, whatever. I'd still be in profit territory. The problem was changing the size without a good reason to do it. And just being not very confident is not a great answer here. I need a way to be able to, I need to be able to evaluate the quality of the setup and then size appropriately based on that. And I was inconsistent in how I did that Monday versus Tuesday, Wednesday. So I'm highlighting that and really driving home the point here that the consistency matters, and I need to make sure that I stay consistent, either reduce size all across the board or trade full size all across the board. But whatever I'm doing, make sure that for A+ setups, it's a certain size no matter what, and for B+ setups, it's a certain size no matter what, and don't go light just because I've been rattled by an earlier loss. That's not a great way to approach things. So anyway, that's the lesson for today. Consistency in risk-adjusted size matters a ton. So I'm not going to go through and actually look at any of these trades individually. The market's been really scattered for the last couple of days. It's been messy. No really great setups, no really great wins, no really great losses. Just a whole lot of not much. But again, this is the big takeaway. So anyway, I hope you find that useful, and we'll be back at the trade videos soon.